I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all for being here. My name is Sean Arendt. I'm the current president of the Clover Creek Restoration Alliance. We are a revival of the Clover Creek Council, which was an advocacy organization for the Clover Chambers watershed. And I believe we have a few original members in the audience of the Clover Creek Council. And we're really grateful for the work that they did to hold this space so that we could, continue this work. So the reason that we are getting organized as a community centers around water, right? Water is obviously the foundation of life, and our waters in the Clover Chambers watershed are really struggling. And perhaps the most symbolic example of this is Clover Creek. So Clover Creek, which used to supply the drinking water for the city of Tacoma, now runs dry for many, many months a year, over half the year. And because of that, and because of the pollution, the salmon run that used to occur in this watershed can no longer reach Clover Creek, can no longer reach Spanaway Creek, Spanaway Lake, and beyond. Our hope, our goal is to reverse this trend. We believe that it's our responsibility to find a way to live with nature, to restore nature back to its original condition. And we realize that salmon are indicator species. So what that means is that if a body of water can sustain salmon, for one, there's enough water in it, and for two, the water is clean enough that we shouldn't be worried about using it as our drinking water. So this is a sole source aquifer. We get no glacial feed in the Clover Chambers. So none of that coming off the mountains is coming in here. We're all coming from lakes, rain, wetlands. So whatever hits the ground here, we all share this drainage. So Spanaway Lake is obviously like one of the jewels of this watershed. 20 years ago, I caught my first fish here, and also my last. And how this event came about, I do have to give a shout out to Kim Underwood. So Kim has been the leading force behind this event. A few months ago, we were like, well, maybe we should do a walk around Spanaway Lake and talk about it. And then Kim was like, all right, I'll get the boathouse. I get 5 or 6 speakers, and and it's just really blossomed from there. So overachiever, but we love her. So we have a really great lineup of guest speakers today. But first, I have the unique opportunity of introducing my co-steward at Swan Creek. We steward Swan Creek Park, which is the last salmon-bearing stream in Tacoma, together. Somebody I've known for a couple years now. And Nateli is a leader in an organization called Roots and Shoots, which was founded by the late, great Jane Goodall. Their objective is to engage young people in environmental work, restoration, advocacy, all of that. So to tell us a little bit, I forgot to mention, Nateli is also an author, which is very cool. So she's been very involved in advocating for the southern resident orcas. So to explain the connection between water, salmon, and orcas, and the work that she's doing, please help me welcome Nateli Sanderson.
Well, hello everyone. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you, Sean, for that introduction. And thank you so much, Kim, for inviting me. I'm so excited to be here today, and I will have to leave early, but I'm still so honored to be here. My name is Nateli Sanderson. I'm a sophomore in high school, and I'm the leader of Tacoma's Roots and Shoots youth chapter. So I'm here today to talk a little bit more about Roots and Shoots, my experience in the importance of youth empowerment in the conservation fields. Roots and Shoots was founded by Dr. Jane Goodall and grounded in her belief that every individual makes a difference. Participants in Roots and Shoots design and implement community action projects that benefit people, other animals, and the environment that we all share. And Roots and Shoots is active in 75 countries and counting. It has over 1 million participants worldwide, And when you join Roots and Shoots, you are part of an enormous global network making a difference together. Roots and Shoots is active in all 50 states and has dedicated Roots and Shoots base camps in 7 cities. Each base camp has local Roots and Shoots staff and volunteers who are actively building relationships, offering support, and cultivating connections. Dr. Jane Goodall often said that in addition to enhancing our understanding of the animal kingdom, she wanted to be remembered for Roots and Shoots. She first founded the Roots and Shoots in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, with 12 students who they came up to her and they said that they were feeling overwhelmed by issues in their community, and she reminded them their own power to make a difference. And so she encouraged them to find small, meaningful actions that they could take in their own community. And Roots and Shoots has since grown from 12 students to a global network, and it just celebrated its 35th anniversary this February. So I started my first Roots and Shoots group shortly after having the life-changing opportunity to meet Dr. Jane Goodall when I was 14. And I'll tell that story a little bit later in this presentation, but first I would like to talk about the inspiration behind my work, the southern resident orcas. So many of our initiatives are focused on orca and salmon recovery. After seeing the southern residents in the wild for the first time when I was 12, I fell in love with these remarkable and beautiful species because of their unique family bonds, their traditions, and just how intelligent they are. And I remember the first time I saw the southern residents so vividly. I was visiting the San Juan Islands with my family after I had just adopted Tahlequah from the Whale Museum. And the day before I saw them, I remember I had missed the J-pod by 1 hour. And so we were devastated. So the next day, my mom and I woke up really early and we waited for 8 hours at the park just staring at the ocean, hoping that we would see them. And we did. We saw the J and the L pod, so that was just remarkable. And it was such a magical experience. And we got to see them spy hopping and playing and breaching. And they were really close to shore, and they stayed close to shore for a really long time. And they were so beautiful as they all swam together, and that memory inspires me to do what I'm doing now. And once I learned that the southern residents are endangered, I realized that I needed to do what I could to help them. The southern residents orcas are threatened by lack of salmon, boat vessel noise, and toxic chemicals that are entering our waterways. And so by doing restoration work, like with Sean, and by doing water quality monitoring and outreach through writing, I hope that I can contribute to creating a more sustainable environment for the southern resident orcas and the salmon that they depend on. When I was in 7th grade, I started writing my first book, For Tokate, which is a realistic fiction chapter book that focused on telling the story of Tokate, a southern resident who spent her whole life in captivity. Tokate was captured in a very devastating and traumatic event at Penn Cove when she was 4 years old. She was pulled away from her mother and her family and deprived of her home and her freedom, living in the world's smallest orca tank. And her tank was falling apart, and the water was not clean, and she was being fed rotten fish. There are many organizations, individuals, and indigenous communities who are fighting for her return home to the Salish Sea. And I attended many conferences to learn more about the southern residents and Tokate. But unfortunately, she passed away shortly after this plan had gotten approved to bring her home. And it was devastating worldwide. And to honor her life, I held a memorial for her at the start of 8th grade, which was a community event. And that made me more inspired to continue my work for her family before it was too late for them too. I published this book to raise awareness about her life and her family and what we can do to help the southern residents. And the first person to receive a copy of that book was Dr. Jane Goodall. So I meeting Dr. Jane and joining Roots and Shoots and the Roots and Shoots Youth Council led me to having so many more opportunities to care for these orcas. I met her 3 days before her 90th birthday, so I started sewing an upcycled quilt, which you can kind of see in the picture, and I gave her my book and an 11-page letter because I had too much I wanted to say and I couldn't summarize any of it. And when the day came that I got to meet her, I could barely eat. I was so shaky and so nervous, and I thought I was going to pass out. But we went backstage into this little room where she was, and she was one of the most welcoming people I've ever met. In all of the overthinking that led up to that moment, I don't think I had fully comprehended it myself. That I was meeting the Dr. Jane Goodall, someone who had truly changed our worlds and someone who I had admired and looked up to since I was 7 years old. I remember how scared I was walking back into that little room, but she just walked over to me and hugged me and held my hands as I told her about my work and how much she had inspired me. And then when I gave her my gift, she looked at the book, looked back at me, asked if I wrote it, and in response to me saying yes, just says, "Good heavens," making the whole room smile. She told me that I needed to join the Roots and Shoots Youth Council and to continue to fight for the southern resident orcas, and that she knew our paths would cross again. That moment felt so surreal. To be in the same room as someone who had changed so many lives and had truly changed the world. The room felt so peaceful despite how nervous I had been beforehand. And I felt like she was truly listening to everything I had to say and wanted to hear about everything I was doing. And with her guidance and her encouragement, I felt inspired to take action. So I started the first Roots and Shoots group in Washington for a long time, and I joined the Roots and Shoots Youth Council. For a little bit more about my work, when I was in 7th grade, I also became a park steward and started leading monthly work parties under the mentorship of other park stewards and staff of Parks Tacoma. And we continue these restoration efforts at Swan Creek, which is a local salmon-bearing stream, removing invasive species and planting native plants to improve the water quality and the overall habitat of the endangered Pacific salmon. And that summer, after meeting Dr. Jane, was filled with so many book signings and events, and I got to go on a small research trip where I got to see orcas and other marine life. And later I applied for the Roots and Shoots Youth Council, and that led me to being a part of a national team of youth leaders across the country. In that year, our Roots and Shoots group really took off. We did a clothing drive, we wrote to legislators about salmon health, and we continued our restoration work. And I was busy with many public speaking events and tabling events and raising money for orca recovery through book sales. And then one big event I spoke at was Ways of the Whales. And then shortly after that, I published my second book, Secrets of the Sailor Sea, which is a children's book about the southern resident orcas. And I hope that with that book, I can inspire more youth to get involved in orca and salmon recovery. And then to expand, one of my main goals is to expand Roots and Shoots in Washington. And so to do this, I started an online groups in hopes to reach others outside of my city. And we meet twice a month, and we all work together on virtual projects. Like right now, we're planning a webinar, and then they are all have their own Roots and Shoots groups. And now I also started another group at the middle school in my district, and we are currently doing a plastic drive with Bridwell. And then my current initiative is starting another Roots and Shoots group in the elementary school in my district, and I'm kickstarting that group with a project focused on green space that I'm working on as part of my current EarthGen Climate Fellowship. And then with my Roots and Shoots group this year, we've continued our restoration work in salmon habitat, but we also started monitoring the water quality of Swan Creek with our grant. And now we started working with Parks Tacoma to clear out bioswales and to reduce runoff. And then moving forward, we are focusing on community outreach by developing our website and social media, as well as more community-centered events. Everything in our watershed is so connected. Salmon are our keystone species, and they are so incredibly vital to our ecosystem. What we do affects salmon, and in turn affects all the other life that depends on salmon. Everything from orcas, to trees, to bears, to humans. What we do affects salmon. When we use pesticides, chemicals in our yards or on our roofs, what we use to wash our cars, the chemical in our tires, it all affects salmon. Whenever it rains, the water carries toxic chemicals down into our storm drains, which eventually infiltrate our waterways and into the sound. And these chemicals are often lethal to salmon. They are threatened by these chemicals as well as rising temperatures. The water around salmon habitat is becoming too warm to be habitable, and these issues will only continue to get worse unless we act. So last summer, my Roots and Shoots group and I received a grant to purchase water quality monitoring equipment, and we started to test on the waters of Swan Creek. We divided up our testing into 2 sessions, one in the fall and the other now in the spring. And we are focusing on various locations of the creek and are comparing our results to decide what actions need to be taken next. So following our fall session of testing, we decided to clear out the park's bioswales to help reduce runoff from entering the storm drains in the first place. And we recently started that initiative to help filter out chemicals before they reach the storm drain. We hope that it'll improve the testing again later this spring. After finishing both of our testing seasons, we will report on our data and look for new ways to improve water quality and decide what actions should be taken next. By continuing restoration efforts, water quality monitoring, and outreach through education, we can create a more sustainable future for the salmon who call our watershed home. Spanaway Lake is approximately 18 miles from the Puget Sound. What we do here makes a difference. And by joining local restoration efforts, you can be a part of creating a more sustainable environment for the Puget Sound. It is so important to get us youth involved in these efforts because we are the ones who will be carrying it on to future generations. Youth empowerment in the conservation field is so important. I hope that I can continue to expand Roots and Shoots in Washington, especially the Spanaway area, to expand on these initiatives. Starting a Roots and Shoots group is simple, and it's free. You just have to find a place to meet, a group of people, and ideas for projects and initiatives, and then you just have to register online. By starting a Roots and Shoots group, we are living Dr. Jane Goodall's message that every individual can make a difference. And if we act, then we can make a more sustainable future. I hope that I can expand Roots and Shoots group in Washington and expand my reach for these projects. It is so vital that we get inspired to take action. Once we understand how interconnected everything in our ecosystem and how vital salmon health and water quality is, we can work together to protect it. I hope that by doing this work, I can inspire my peers, and together we can inspire others. And by doing this, we will foster hope in our communities and feel more empowered to create a more sustainable future. Thank you.
Folks have questions for Nateli after each speaker. We'll provide that opportunity. So, do you have any questions or comments? Yep.
What do you do in your spare time?
Well, I still have schoolwork, and then I hang out with my friends a lot, and then I also read, and I spend a lot of time in nature. So,
Good for you.
thank you. Yeah.
Where are your books available?
Yeah, they're available online, and then I also have a lot of book signings. So, yeah, those you can also find online in my events. Yeah.
How do you get like motivated to join?
Well, a lot of it is you need volunteer hours to graduate. So but I do, a lot of my friends do really care about the environment too. So I post it on social media, and then I get a lot of engagement, and then just talking to my friends and asking them for help, and that's gotten them really involved, and then they start to care more about it, and yeah.
What schools are you working with? It's for here. You go to Franklin Pierce.
Yeah, I go to Franklin Pierce, and then the Ford Middle School, and then Collins Elementary School. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Alrighty, next up, I want to introduce Dr. Jeff Tepper, who I believe is having some assistance today. Is that right? So Janet Spingath will be delivering Jeff's message for him, but Jeff is a researcher, professor emeritus of geology, and a published author, going to tell us a little bit more about the history of Spanaway Lake. So come on up.
So my name is Janet Spingath, and I met Jeff in my adventures with weeds. I'm on the state noxious weed control board, where we go after invasive weeds all over the state of Washington. And my husband and I we ran an underwater diver-assisted suction harvest boat where we hand removed aquatic weeds from fresh water. So I think I met you there, and I have his talk. He's been on a wonderful geologic exploration in Morocco where he left his voice behind. And so unfortunately he can only speak for about a paragraph. So I have his slides here, his lecture, and I'm going to stand. Can you guys, where should I stand for you guys? Dr. Jeff Tepper, you want to stand and face everybody while I introduce you? Okay. So Jeff came to be involved with Spanaway Lake. He was on the faculty at UPS for 20 years, and every other fall he taught an environmental geochemistry course in which students analyzed water and sediment from local lakes and then interpreted their data to better understand, quote, how lakes work and their environmental histories. So they studied different lakes each time and came back here to Spanaway for the first time in 2013. After that, he had several students do thesis projects here at Spanaway, mainly focused on trying to understand the causes of harmful algae blooms, or HABs. Next. This talk will have 6 main topics. I'll read them to you. Number 1, what tools and techniques do we use to study the lake? 2, a brief history of the lake since its formation at the end of the last glacial period. 3, the characteristics of the lake, mainly its hydrology and current health. 4, the sources of nutrients, mainly phosphorus that drive algal blooms. And number 5, the process of water column stratification and how that contributes to algal blooms. And 6, and finally, ways in which Spanaway is unique, because, as Jeff says, every lake is different. So studying a lake requires a combination of field and lab work. For studying the water, we make some measurements in the field and some on samples that we collect and take back to the lab. The object at the left here is called a sonde. It's a device we lower through the water column to measure changes with depth. We can install onto it our choice of probes. So these are the probes. Here's the sonde. For a wide range of parameters, including the ones listed here. Dissolved oxygen. Temperature. pH. Chlorophyll. Turbidity. And that's it? That's enough. Okay. So turbidity is like the murkiness, all right? So they take all the parameters, including the ones that he just mentioned, and continuously the sonde and all the probes will continuously record the results. So as it's going down, it's checking it at each level all the way, keeping track of that, all the way through the depth. So when you go down the depth, that's called a column of water, or a water column. So we're taking it down the water column. On the right over here, it almost looks like a messenger thing that they used to have at the banks. Okay, it's kind of similar, okay? It's a device they use for collecting water samples from depth. So we lower it into the 2 ends, and they're open at both ends, like a can that's open at both ends, until we get down to the target depth. They stop it there, and then they send a weight sliding down the line, whoop, like that, and it hits the bottle and causes it to snap shut. And that captures water at that depth. Then they haul it up, and they use that when they want to collect a sample for chemical analysis in their lab, such as for total phosphorus or other elements in the water. For studying sediment, the stuff at the bottom, we collect cores using what is called a piston corer. And that's this thing right here. It's got a long shaft, and at the open end, it's got a thing that's going to grab and cut through the mud. It's basically a 2-inch diameter stainless steel pipe 1 meter long, that is sharpened at one end and has a piston or plug at the other. We drive this into the bottom and then bring it back up and extrude the mud that's inside. It's easiest to do this from a stable platform like the floating dock. So there's the students on the dock, and they're getting ready to find out what's inside that piston or that probe, the core. Here at Spanaway Lake, the Tibbetts family were kind enough to let the students use their dock so that Jeff could have his entire class participate in the process. This is you guys taking the core out, right? Pushing it down. Okay, this is you pushing it down. Once the core is collected, we bring it to the surface and extrude it from the core into the length. We generally core near the center of a lake. So we anchor the platform and then lower the core to the bottom by attaching a series of metal push rods. You can see some down here lying on the deck. These screw together so we can add segments and operate up to 50 feet of water. We simply push the core into the bottom, which typically has a texture like soft butter. As an aside, when we were pulling weeds in Spanaway Lake, I will say the bottom is more, for a diver, it's more like Jell-O. It actually wobbles. If you punch it, you can see the wobbling go. So soft butter is nice. Chocolate mousse. The chocolate mousse, yeah. There's a YouTube video set to music that my students made, and it's quite entertaining if you want to see coring in action. Once the core is collected, we bring it to the surface and extrude it from the core into a length of PVC pipe that's been cut in half. So it kind of looks like a gutter. Then it goes back to the lab, they drive it back there, where we can slice it up and analyze individual 1 centimeter slices, size of your fingernail, or the width of your fingernail about. Many types of information can be obtained from the sediment core. Pollen indicates vegetation that was around the lake and thus climate and land use. Plant remains can be dated by carbon-14, and chemical analysis can tell us about land use, such as logging, development, and even earthquake histories. In this picture, there's a white layer. That's ash from the eruption of Crater Lake, almost 8,000 years ago. So these sediments preserve very long histories. At Spanaway, we recovered over 4 meters of core, which is about 13 feet, and that represents thousands of years, probably older than the pyramids, even though we didn't find the ash layer. I think there is a lot more sediment that we didn't get. During the last ice age, a glacier flowed south into what is now Puget Sound. Okay, so this is this lobe right here of ice. The area where we're sitting was under thousands of feet of ice. As climate began warming, the ice melted, leaving behind a thick blanket of sand and gravel, and stranded within the sediment were large blocks of ice that eventually melted to form depressions we call kettles. So you can kind of see this is sand and rock, and here's where the ice was, and this is a glacial kettle lake. Water accumulated in these kettles, forming kettle lakes, and Spanaway is one of them. Well, Native Americans lived around these lakes for thousands of years, and this area is known to be one where they dug roots, maybe camas, for food, but their lifestyles left no record in the lake sediment. So in most local lakes, first clear evidence of human impact occurs in the mid-19th century when sediment accumulation rates increase, currently about 2.5 millimeters per year in Spanaway, due to logging and agriculture, which brings increased erosion. In the 19th century, sediment accumulation rates began increasing, which is currently about 2.5 millimeters per year in Spanaway, due to logging and agriculture, which made increased erosion. And later to tourism. Here's a picture of the Park Lake Hotel down here in the 1800s, and residential development. In this plot right here, okay. I got to see this on here, okay. So this is a graph here, right here. This axis here is depth in the core. So this is the zero. Then we're going to go down through the sediment down to 160 centimeters, and then across here is our concentrations of 2 different elements that he found in the sediment. This blue line here is lead. This red line here, which goes way over here, it starts at the top. This is phosphorus. So you can see on here that these things begin rising, increasing, as we hit this shallower area. Why do you think that is? Why did it start rising? Why do we get more lead? What industry? No, logging doesn't increase lead. What increases lead?
Leaded gas and
Not in 1890s.
there was mining.
What kind of mining? What goes with mining in Tacoma? Smelting. Mining all over the world and melting it down in a Sarco and having that great big smokestack and pushing lead and arsenic and copper into our air and down into our lakes, right? Okay, are we? That was a good answer, right?
Yes.
They got a good answer. You get A plus. Okay. Now, so here's the smelter. It's the top of it. It was 571 feet tall, and here's where Spanaway is, right? And this is the plume. You guys probably have heard of the plume, the Sarco plume. It kind of engulfed all of us. And Tacoma soils, we know that we can't garden in our backyards in Tacoma because you have to have your soil, it's full of arsenic and lead. Although the lead levels in Spanaway Lake sediment are much higher than the natural background, they are very well below any EPA levels for concern and not a health concern. However, from a teaching perspective, I found them very useful because they represent a time marker for when they show up in the lake. All right, now to lake characteristics. Spanaway is 250 acres. It has an average depth of 16 feet. Its maximum depth is 29 feet. We have one surface inflow, which is Coffee Creek, and one surface outflow, which is Spanaway Creek. There's a significant groundwater in and outflow. So water moves from the south to the north in the lake. The residence time of the water in the lake is 3 to 6 months, estimated. So it goes from the south to the north. Two important takeaways from the slide is one, water moves from south to north through the lake, and the residence time, average time of parcel of water spends in the lake is fairly short, 3 to 6 months. This is important when thinking about controlling the hazardous algae blooms, because it means most of the water in the lake this year will be gone and replaced by new water next year. Where does the water come from? Well, although it is impossible to precisely quantify the amount of groundwater entering the lake, there is broad agreement that groundwater is the main source. 60 to 65% versus 30 to 35% from Coffee Creek, and a small amount from direct precipitation. We also have several lines of evidence telling us where it enters the lake. There are visible vents on the bottom of the southeast. And we can also use water temperature to identify groundwater inflow areas. This is because groundwater is about the same temperature, 48 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, all year round. In the winter, when the lake is colder, at around 39 degrees Fahrenheit, we can map groundwater inflow areas by towing a temperature sonde and looking for areas with anomalously warm water. Like, why is it warm there? Sandy Williamson has done this. Where is Sandy? He did it. He produced this map of the southeast area. So this area here is red, it's bright red, and then it gets green up here. So this area here was warmer. So anyway, there's more groundwater flow there. So the warmer water, the groundwater is coming in mostly through here. So the canal is about 100% groundwater, and there's a lot of vents. This thing here, if you can see it here, it looks like a vent. When you're looking at it underwater, reminds me of it looks like a spring. There's no plants growing in it. It's kind of, sometimes it's moving and bubbling. Sometimes you'll see fish all around it breathing that nice cold water. It's clear of all the plants, and they're pretty, we call them vents, but springs also works. So that's about, like Sandy and Jeff found out, it's about 100% groundwater in the south end and the high area of vents. The higher groundwater input in the southeast is also what you would expect based on the regional flow path. It's coming from that direction. All right, so we're going to be talking about trophic states. An important characteristic of a lake is its trophic state. This is a measure of the biological productivity of the lake. It's basically how much plant matter, mainly algae, is growing in the water column. So this concept was developed in Scandinavia about 100 years ago and recognizes 3 categories of lakes. The first one is when nutrient supply is low, like up here, there will be a minimal amount of aquatic plant growth and the water will be clear. These lakes will be termed oligotrophic. At the other extreme, down here, when nutrients are abundant, there is a lot of algae. The water is murky. These are termed eutrophic. In between, where they're moderately productive lakes, are referred to mesotrophic. Over time, a lake will naturally evolve from clear down to oligotrophic down to eutrophic as organic matter accumulates. Spanaway would have been oligotrophic when it was first formed, but over thousands of years, as organic matter accumulated, it became more productive and shallower. This natural progression of lakes takes hundreds or thousands of years. But in recent decades, human activity has greatly accelerated the process in lakes worldwide, mainly by increasing the amount of nutrients, especially phosphorus, entering a lake. This feeds the algal blooms and aquatic plant growth. At least 80% of lakes in South Puget Sound are experiencing eutrophication, and Spanaway is one, as all of you are well aware. As the lake becomes more eutrophic, its appeal for recreation diminishes. So we look for the best way to mitigate the process. This won't be the same for every lake, but the first step is to identify the sources of nutrients and how they are cycled in the lake. When nutrients are delivered to a lake, we refer to that as nutrient loading, and there are two types, external loading and internal loading. This is the sediment, this line is at the bottom. This is where a lot of nutrients are, and then we have the land on either side where there's nutrients coming in. So external loading includes situations where phosphorus is coming from outside the lake. This would include agricultural runoff, fertilizer runoff from lawns, and effluent from septic tanks. Internal loading refers to recycling of phosphorus within the lake, which occurs in two main ways. Organic matter that grows in the water column will sink to the bottom when it dies. See, it just piles up. It's called sedimentation on the diagram, and there it can decompose and return phosphorus to the water column. In addition, in most lakes, including Spanaway, the bottom sediment is rich in accumulated organic matter, the remains of plants and algae that died long ago. In the sediment, much of the phosphorus is bound to iron, basically forming an iron phosphate mineral. However, if conditions are anoxic, which means there's no oxygen in their conditions, this iron-bound phosphorus can be released, and there's some concern that this may be an important source of phosphorus in Spanaway. So you can imagine, as it's rotting, it's using up the oxygen to bind with other things. Oxygen runs out, that's how it becomes anoxic. We run out of the oxygen. The release of phosphorus from the sediment is connected to one other lake process we need to mention, and that is called stratification. If we were to go out on the lake today and lower a temperature probe, we would see that the temperature is the same, probably, from top to bottom. You see? Okay. If the water is all the same temperature, it's all the same density. So think about that. As things get cold, they contract and they sink. Generally, water does that until it freezes and it pops to the top. But all while it's getting colder to freezing, it's sinking, getting heavy. If the water is all the same temperature, it's all the same density, so it's free to mix from top to bottom, and all of the water will be oxygenated. However, as we head into spring and the air gets warmer, that will cause the surface water of the lake to also warm up. And because warm water is less dense, it's going to float near the top, the lake begins to become in layers or strata. So it's called stratified. The warm water forms a less dense layer that stays on the top and isolates the cooler, denser water down below from the oxygen. Okay, so on this axis, what do we have on the axis? I can't read it. We have the depth as you go down, and we have the temperature as you go up. Okay, so Jeff, you have this first one is this light blue. It says it's May.
Okay, so I said this is depth and this is getting warmer in this direction.
Right.
And each of these lines, some temperature measurements on a different date, ranging from like May to August. And so what you see is that the surface water is getting progressively warmer, and there's always this upper layer, this same temperature that's mixed But below that, there's colder, denser water, which is isolated atmosphere by this. And that water is slowly getting warmer as well, but it's always colder and denser than what's above.
Right. So in the August, it's quite dramatic compared to what it would be right now. Meanwhile, in the sediment, organic matter is decomposing, it's taking oxygen and it's glomming its carbon molecule onto it and making CO2. And that consumes oxygen from the water. Once all of this dissolved oxygen is consumed, we have anoxic conditions that promote the release of the phosphorus that was bound to the iron. So now the phosphorus can come loose. As a result, by late summer or fall, the water is stratified with warm water near the surface, cold water containing low oxygen but lots of dissolved nutrients at the bottom. This nutrient-rich bottom water is the fuel for toxic algal blooms. A bloom has 3 requirements: nutrients, sunlight, and cyanobacteria. And this will occur when they get together. One way this can happen is in the late fall, when the surface water cools and becomes just as dense as the bottom waters. Then we say the lake turns over. So I like to think of it like when you have a big pot of flour that's risen and you stick your hand into it, it goes and everything on the sides comes up, right? So it just mixes. This dense is pushing down and the sides are coming up. It mixes and the nutrient-rich water is spread throughout the water column. The other way is that some blue-green algae, the toxic form, have the ability to move up and down in the water column. So they can travel down to load up on nutrients and then rise back up to the surface to get the sunlight, reproduce, and bloom. Okay, so this is their class compiled data from several lakes, 7 lakes, the students studied between 2006 and 2015. All the data were taken in the fall, but we have 6 different lakes. This one is Star Lake. This is Wahop Lake. This is Gradley Lake. This is American Lake. This is Spanaway Lake. And this is Star Lake and Lake Doloff. Here we have this shape on, yeah, okay, this is the depth. This is the parts per million of phosphorus. So here we have this shape for Star Lake, this shape for Wahop Lake, this shape for Gradley Lake, this shape for American Lake, and this bizarre shape for Spanaway Lake. All the data are from the fall when the lakes were stratified, and they show how phosphorus content varied with depth. Remember that when the water column is stratified, we commonly see phosphorus and other nutrients begin to build up in the bottom waters. And this is seen here for every lake except one. Which one looks different? You guys' lake. Previously, I said that every lake is different, and here is an example. The question is why? Why is Spanaway different? The unique thing about Spanaway in this case is the amount of iron in the sediment. We already said that in sediment, much of the phosphorus is bound to iron, and that under anoxic conditions, that phosphorus can be released. But if there is a lot of iron, like example of a ratio of iron to phosphorus of greater than 10 times more iron than phosphorus, there's enough excess to reduce or even prevent phosphorus release. We measured iron contents in sediment cores from about 10 lakes, and here are the data now. Now, here's the axes are, again, depth, right here, and phosphorus that is mobile and phosphorus that is bound in the sediment. Yeah, okay, iron to phosphorus. This is a quote from Hugh. I think the high iron content of the sediment reduces internal phosphorus loading at Spanaway Lake, but there are still blooms. Not everyone agrees on why this is the case, but in closing, I'd like to go back to the topic of external loading. On the maps, the red outlines the Spanaway Lake watershed. All surface and groundwater inside the line should flow into the lake. The blue arrow are a reminder of groundwater flow direction from southeast to northwest. The map on the right shows the locations of about more than 1,500 septic tanks. The septic system in the watershed is, the white area is JBLM over here, right? No, here. That's JBLM. This is the flow. This is the watershed surrounding Spanaway Lake. It's flowing this direction, the water is. And there's around it are about more than 1,500 septic tanks. More 5,000 to 6,000 septic tanks. Ugh, okay. So any of the of these that leak will add phosphorus to the groundwater flowing towards the lake. The slide on the left, you've seen this before. This is where Sandy took his groundwater temperatures. Sandy's map showing that there are major groundwater inputs in the southeast area, right? That's where all the vents are. The slide on the right from a Pierce County study, and it shows how the volume of aquatic plants varies from one location to another around the lake. Plant volume will be higher where the water is shallow enough to support rooted vegetation around the lake edges. But to me, there is also a striking correlation between plant biovolume and the areas where groundwater inflows have been identified. So here's the groundwater flow and more biomatter there. In summary, Spanaway Lake originated 12,000 years ago as a kettle lake, and ever since it has been evolving, as lakes naturally do, towards a more, quote, productive state. Human activity over the past 100 years has accelerated this process by increasing the delivery of nutrients, particularly phosphorus, to the lake. A unique feature of Spanaway Lake is the high iron content of the sediment, thank you Coffee Creek, which helps to bind phosphorus and reduce internal loading. Attempts to control hazardous algal blooms will be most successful if they take into account the hydrology. For example, the residence time of the water in the lake, the flow directions, the nutrient sources, internal and external, and the unique attributes of this lake. Remember, every lake is different. The most important ingredient for success is a well-informed and engaged lake community that is willing to ask questions and together identify the best path forward. You can ask Jeff questions now.
My question is, Spanaway Marsh, what effect does Spanaway Marsh, being now flooded as part of JBLM, have upon the iron, the source of the iron? Because long ago, 100 years ago, it was in fact dry farmland, not a wetland. So I'm just curious how that plays into the iron. Whether it was worse then or now or what?
Well, the iron would always have been in the soil or in the sediment, and it will remain, sort of locked up there if it's not waterlogged. So what enables the iron to leave the soil is to have water levels high enough that the soil is waterlogged, and then that comes draining out. It's bringing the iron with it, but when that iron then encounters the atmosphere, it precipitates. So I don't know a lot about the history of the transition from farmland to wetland. I believe there was a dam built around the early 1870s around Spanaway, and so that would have presumably raised water level and inundated some land that was previously not waterlogged. And then after that, it's just a matter of flushing what's in the soil out when it rains. Or I don't really want to go into this because I don't know much about it, but when they did some excavation over there recently, and that allowed a lot of iron-rich water to drain out of the wetland, that's just accelerating the natural process.
There was a drainage district, quite large. I think it was a couple hundred, it was probably 600 acres, I'm guessing. Went several miles to the south. And so I guess they were always had some flooding there, and they were draining it for agriculture. And then that's what led to the channel going into the lake at the south end.
Yeah, I mean, there's other places around this area where they put in ditches to drain land to make agriculture, more viable, and other ditches, like, they're just full of iron-rich water. I mean, it's, in hindsight, it wasn't such a good thing.
Jeff, I understand what you said about your reluctance to get into the disturbance in the marsh as of late, but is that something to be concerned about, or is that just, you said it accelerated the natural process? Is it something to be concerned about long-term, or is it benign for the most part?
Iron in general is benign, so it's not, it's not a very, once it reaches the atmosphere and it oxidizes, it's inert. So the iron is not a problem per se. It's it's unattractive to have a lot of iron-stained sediment, on your dock, for example, but it's not a toxin.
The fact that it's being accelerated, does that portend anything for the future at this point? Will it be reduced in the future because it's accelerated now, as an example, or?
I would say that that's probably not going to happen on the human timescale because the amount of iron in the soil dwarfs what's being released in the water. So there's a very large reservoir to draw upon for that.
So isn't the iron locking up the phosphorus though? So isn't that beneficial in some ways?
Well, yes. So his point was the iron does help in binding phosphorus. You don't necessarily need to have that large quantity being delivered.
Aren't we putting phosphorus, or not phosphorus, iron into the lake for treatment?
That's one option, yes. But that's a different grain size of iron for one thing. So this, what you put in the lake to treat the lake goes to the bottom. What's coming into the lake from the lake is really, really small particles that tend to float around for a while and
So they don't make an impact on the phosphorus like that.
so
They don't make as much impact. The smaller particles don't make as much.
well, smaller particles would make more because they have more surface area, but you're just putting, the amount you're putting in is all coming to the mouth of the creek. It's not really treating the lake as a whole. It's over time it has accumulated in the sediment, and that's, I think, why we have less bottom release here than some places. But what's coming in from Coffee Creek will not be a
Would it be beneficial to
solution
get rid
to
of some of the sediment that's adding to the phosphorus release? Or is just putting iron in the lake and locking it up the way to go?
I think iron is a good way to address nutrient loading. Not everybody agrees with that, but it was how nature did it here for a long time. So, yes.
Yeah, Jeff, I'm curious, if there were more aquatic plants in the lake itself, would that at all compete or restrict the growth of the toxic algae by competing for nutrients?
Okay, did everybody hear the question? Okay, yes. So all these plants are competing for the same nutrients, and you kind of have a choice. You can have no aquatic plants, and you're going to have a lot of algae, or if you have a lot of algae, you'll have fewer plants. So, the natural balance between those two, we have some control over that here, but you wouldn't want to eradicate all the plants because then your algal bloom will be worse.
In reference to George's question, the period of farming was maybe 100 years, maybe a little more, but the period of iron coming in is thousands of years, right? And the farming stopped in, before the problems got worse in Spanaway Lake. So it seems to me it probably wouldn't have affected that, from 17 something, 18, whatever it was. And that sort of ancient history in the big scheme of things.
Right, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but when we see phosphorus in the sediment core starting to climb, I'm not saying that that's a major contributor. It's just a historical record, but that's buried, that's 50 centimeters into the bottom or more, and that's pretty much not available.
Well, Jeff, it is difficult to watch you try to talk. So, really appreciate you pushing through that. Fascinating stuff. And so people can't really see up here, but Jeff has left his email, and I'd encourage you to ask him questions and let him write down a response. That would be helpful. But yeah, next I'd like to welcome Bryan Mohlman from the Pierce Conservation District. Bryan has a master's degree in environmental studies and is currently the Habitat Stewardship Program Manager for PCD, and I believe on the board of the Bird Alliance. Is that? Yeah, congrats on your new appointment. So yeah, Bryan, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you all so much for having us out here. As was indicated, my name is Bryan Mohlman. I work as the Habitat Stewardship Program Manager for Pierce Conservation District. I've been there for the better part of the last 3 years now. I'll let my partner introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting us here to speak. I'm Mayari Summers. I'm on the water quality team at Pierce Conservation District, and I've been here for about a month and a half now.
Yes, one of our new inductees, so be kind. I really want to just come up and do a little plug for what we do at the district, talk a little bit more about how individuals can engage with that, and go a little bit deeper there, right? We've been hearing a lot about what is out there in terms of the nutrient loads, and we're not going to get into all that density of knowledge here with what I'm talking about. More so, how can an individual engage with that and maybe try and benefit the community and the environment along the way, right? So initially, I'd love to start off by asking the crowd, how many folks are fully aware of what is a conservation district? Where did it kind of come from, and how do they engage with the community? Okay. I'm seeing about 5-6 hands. That's a pretty good percentage, honestly. I like to think that we are a bit of a best kept secret within the county, but we try and do a lot of support and good out there. So take ourselves back 100 years, right? We're in the mid-1930s. There's economic turmoil, global turmoil, and we need to feed an ever-growing population. So the goal was to increase farm production at the time rapidly. Well, they succeeded in that, but it was not through the use of regenerative agriculture. So I'm sure we all know the resulting environmental disaster that came from that. When you add in the plants, take them out, add them in, take them out, the soil becomes loose and depleted. We saw come through the Dust Bowl, right? One of the first really huge warning bell signs that reached all the way up to the federal government, saying that some of these different resources that we take for granted every single day won't be here if we don't care for them and try to preserve them in some way, shape, or form, right? So a few years later, 1935, we have the Soil Conservation Act passed. So as you can imagine from the title, it's more focused around that regenerative agriculture, preserving our soil within our communities. A couple of years after that, 1937, we have this first soil conservation district established. Well, cut now, almost 100 years later, and we have many, many, many more conservation districts across the country. Pierce Conservation District has now been going for over 75 years, and our body of work has quite diversified. Part of that is because it is in direct relationship with local cities, the county itself, and community groups, right? We want to be able to provide service to the community that will be the most directly beneficial to those involved. So we have a number of different things that go into that, right? I personally manage the Habitat Stewardship Program under the umbrella of water quality. But there's also the farm team, which harkens back to the original days, helping with soil testing and whatnot. There's also the Harvest Pierce County team out there with our community gardens, our environmental education team, the other habitat team, which is more rurally focused, whereas we're more urban focused, and then a number of other areas, right? So as I alluded to, I'm in water quality, and that's part of why I'm here today, right? We're hearing a lot about what's impacting the water quality. Well, my particular segment of it is the habitat stewardship side. So that revolves around managing and organizing volunteer groups, especially in our critical natural open spaces. We have 12 sites that are active right now across the county that people can volunteer at every single month. where we host activities like removing invasive species. I'm sure that you've seen plenty of blackberry around the area. That stuff will take over, and it forms what's called a monoculture. Raise of hands, we all know what a monoculture is? Yeah, we at least have a handful. For those who don't, it's effectively just saying that there's a singular plant that is outcompeting everything else. It's a problem for a number of reasons, but namely, it makes it so nothing else can live there. It has been shown that in an area, if you have a diversity of plant life, you have a significant impact on how water is filtered and it infiltrates into this local soil. So if we can better filter water at a soil level before it gets into our water bodies, we're making an impact. I'm sure you've all heard the phrase, if it hits the ground, it hits the sound, right? And so we are trying to find places of key importance that will help benefit the community. One area that we were actually just at this morning was over in Fircrest, not too far from here, up in Whittier Park. It's a lovely little park. I would highly recommend you go. They have phenomenal walking trails over there, as well as a handful of interpretive signs that are fun to read. But it is the headwaters of Leech Creek. So an area that we've been engaging with for the better part of the last 8 years. We've had volunteer events out there monthly for a good period of time, but it's finally getting into a point where it's really come the distance and there's not a huge presence of invasive species. So we do this rinse and repeat around the area. I like to think of this as an opportunity to tangibly make a positive change every single month in our community with doing something as simple as pulling some weeds or adding in some really good native biodiverse plants, right? Everybody at different levels, ages, education types can engage with this. And in fact, we're always looking for more stewards. So I always like to give the plug if anybody is at all interested or they know somebody who might be interested in taking that step up to get trained as an elevated volunteer, we would love to have you. I think that community input is incredibly important when it comes to the way in which we manage these restoration sites, because we don't want it to always be just, well, oh, Bryan says that we got to do it this way at this site, right? Our habitat stewards come with their own knowledge, with their own backgrounds, their own passions, and then we can get some really cool projects off the ground, acting as kind of that partnership bridge between the community and maybe the local city or jurisdiction, whatever it may be, right? So that's my pitch, and I would love to have anybody who wants to join us, whether it's just for a volunteer event or for stewardship. Come on down, reach out to me. I've got flyers in the back as well in case anybody wants my information. It's back there. So that is one half of the stewardship, or rather the water quality program within Pierce Conservation District. I'd like to briefly give the mic over here to Mayari so that she can talk a little bit more about the Green Stormwater Infrastructure Program. This is another way in which we impact water quality.
So at Pierce Conservation District, I help manage and design green stormwater infrastructure projects. Green stormwater infrastructure, that includes rain gardens, rain tanks. It includes depaving, breaking up that pavement and installing native plants and pollinator supporting plants. And we can also provide the technical and financial assistance for all of these types of projects, as well as converting your lawns into urban habitat. So these are really simple ways to improve water quality on your property. And you can do this through our mini grant program. It's a program that you would work with us, and it's about, you could earn up to $4,000 to install these types of projects. But before you do that, you need to schedule a free site visit with PCD staff. And we'll meet with you on your property, assess your yard, and we can discuss ideas of what's possible, what kind of stormwater projects that we could install. And we do provide the plants and the design, and you can speak with us about any concerns or questions that you have. But it's a really great program, and we can help you actually, I'm going to be over there at the table, and you can, I can help you with this process and get you started. But yeah, like storm or GSI rain gardens, the goal is to slow down stormwater and collect stormwater and treat it so that the pollutants don't end up in our waterways. But yeah, there's all sorts of, I'll have handouts over there, and you can chat with me if you're interested in any of this. Okay.
Yeah, I just, as we're closing out here, because we're keeping it mercifully short, you don't have to hear my voice too much longer. But I love the way in which their program meets you where you are. They'll go to your home, take a look at your site, assess it, provide you a detailed plan by which you can then make your own decisions. There's a number of ways in which to engage, right? As Mayari mentioned, there's the mini grant that is available that gets up to $4,000. There's also just the fact that they're coming out there, they're providing a service by making a detailed plan. Now that plan, if you were to have the funding yourself, you can just get started on it right away, right? There's nothing stopping you, and it's gonna have a lot of really great advice. The last thing, the only other one that I wanted to mention as well, is there's an urban tree sale program. I think you'll note we have a lot of great trees out here. In a lot of city areas, we are lacking urban canopy. Now, when it comes to bang for your buck for water filtration and infiltration, sucking it all up, trees are one of the best investments. So the urban tree sale is a marvelous opportunity for people to engage, to get a really beneficial tree in their property and starting to pump out some of those results, right? Mitigating aspects of the heat island effect, right? Trying to get a little bit cooler around your house, trying to soak up some of those street pollutants. Anyway, I'll stop yapping. I really appreciate you all having us out here, giving us a little bit of time to talk about some of the different actions maybe that you could join us in taking and some of the ways in which we can support you all to make this place a little bit healthier and happier. Thank you. Yeah. If anybody would like to ask questions, we're happy to answer here or at the table afterwards, so please.
Okay. Is Kurt Reidinger here? There's no Kurt. Okay, so next I want to invite up our wonderful... Oh, Sharon, what's up? Oh, there are some incredible pastries just on the other side. Please eat some. Drink some. There's coffee. There's water. Help yourselves. If I don't see those pastries at least half gone, we're gonna have a problem, people. No. All right, there we go. A little bit of coercion, goes a long way. So next, I want to invite up our host, Will Anderson, with Spanaway Lake Adventure. William Anderson.
I'm William Anderson, and I'm kind of like the fun captain. So my whole involvement in this is really just trying to work with Kim and bring some of the groups that have similar interests, like-minded in helping out the aquifer, helping out the lake, and helping out some of the the native species that surround the lake. And for me, I'm great at helping people have fun, get in the boat, and enjoy the things that these groups help provide here, help to continue fighting to help us keep this recreational area the way that it is. We're well aware that in order for us to be out here having a good time and enjoying recreation, we have to work together to keep this place clean. We have to work together to understand, where this algae is coming from, because as of late, it cuts into our recreational time. I grew up in Spanaway for the most part, been here since the mid-'80s, and we used to swim in this thing all the time in the summers, the springs, and only problem that we had back then was every once in a while somebody gets some swimmer's itch, right? And now it seems that 40 years later, there's that problem, and then there's just other problems, and now we finally have the capacity to help out, and so that's what we're doing here. as you all know, I mean, maybe you know, but the boathouse is a historic place, and it's served this community for 100 years, and we take that very seriously. We consider ourselves guardians of this historic place, and we have a paddle club called Paddle P&W, and we go about as far as Yakima east, and about as far down south as Hood River, that area. And we try to get as many places in along the I-5 corridor as possible. And a lot of places that we visit have something that the community has around their spot, their lake, that they can enjoy and that they can gather and continue to be a community. So we paddle here at this lake. This is my home lake, and a couple years ago it was boarded up, and it really seemed like the community aspect of this great place, as well as some of the environmental or the just some of the environments, was deteriorating. And so we just came up with a plan to try to acquire this place from Pierce County and do what we can to help bring back some fun, bring back some awareness, bring back some community. And as I look out right now, it looks like it's working. So we're going into our third year, and we plan to try to get some other events going here. You see this, the top of this tent right here, that's an event that we're going to start out this way. That's our DJ's tent right there, and we're going to be playing some music on the water and trying to attract people here, activate this park. We've got folks that come down from Seattle, from Olympia, from the East Side, Bellevue area, and we try to hold a presence online to spread our existence. But we'd also like to take a deeper root into what the groups that are trying to help this area are doing. So thank you for coming today. Thank you for allowing us to take part in what you're doing. And come by here, get yourself a boat, get in a kayak. We got life vests for you. Tell your people. And that's really important for me to say that, because that's the only reason that this park exists. The only way that it keeps going is if the community comes and participates and spreads the word. So there it is.
It costs to rent a kayak for 3 hours.
Oh man!
How about 1 hour? What's...
Yeah, so we do have different rental prices for kayaks, paddleboards. We have the traditional rowboat that you're used to seeing here. We've put an electric troll motor on it, and that's another point too. We are advocating for this lake to not have motors. I know that we have a crowd that doesn't appreciate that perspective, but for us, we hang out at this boat launch all the time. I know I totally skirted that price question, but I'll get back to it. We hang out at this boat launch all the time, and the thing that gets us is just seeing the debris that people toss off their boats, or the ones that are coming out of their motors, or just seeing the film that's pushed down to this way after everybody goes home and is recovering from their fun. We get an opportunity to see the residual and what the environment's left to just soak up and try to take care of it, so you can come back and have a better day on Sunday and do it all over again. So anyway, it's a pet peeve, so I just had to touch it. For pricing though, pricing's tough because in order for a business to compete, there's the pricing, and then there's other people that are doing this, and you want to try to have this standard level of pricing. But we're trying to place our pricing around some of the community input, because our venture every business has to make money to survive, but our primary mission is not to make money. Our primary mission is to get this place so that it can fund itself and just survive and be something that exists for just the kids growing up, so they can have those stories. It won't be Bud, they won't be talking about Bud, but they'll be talking about some of the other people that are here and some of the fun that they had here and just how they participated in taking care of this treasure. So right now, our highest pricing is probably, I think it's in the $35 hour range for the first hour. And then we've got this scaled pricing where if you get it for 3 hours, it comes down to like 20. I'm going to say you could probably get a kayak for 3 hours out in the water for $45 to $50. I have to put it in guesstimation because I don't really take care of that part of the business. I usually get told what we need and then I go and find it. So, but yeah, we have a website. Tell you more information. It's at SpanawayLakeAdventures.com or paddlepnw.com. And, you can tell your folks that and they can price it out, plan it out, all that. Man, set me up another one so I can answer it. That was good. Yes.
Tell us about the fishing dock.
Oh, or the lack thereof, right? So there used to be a wooden dock out there, and some years ago it didn't survive an attack from a jet ski, and so the county had to pull it out. And so the difficulty in replacing it right away is that the foundation of it is super old, as we just talked about, and it's in state waters. So now we have the county and the state working together to try to get these permits. And I mean, let's just face it, the counties, the state, all the entities, they don't work well together all the time. So it tends to delay things. I think the permits for that were a 2-year project. So we do have everything passed now. They should start production on that dock the end of summer at the latest. But let's give that a buffer, winter, But a good thing about that is that we were able to help do is advocate for a galvanized dock, which is a structure that should last longer. And we also advocated for a section to be teed off towards the south or back towards that way. So because we have this place, we consider ourselves, like I said, the guardians. So basically from that bulkhead to almost the end of the beach, we patrol this. We try to keep people, working together and having fun together as a community, reminding people that we all share this place. And we are also pushing towards improvements in this area. For example, there is a fence that used to be over there by the dock. So we were able to talk the county into pulling that out and allowing it to be a shore that the fishermen or the fishing anglers, whatever, could utilize. Because at the end of the day, the old method was to try to cram all this into this area right here, all right by the boat launch. So you've got people swimming by the boat launch, people putting boats in, people throwing hooks out, metal fishing, which is where a big old magnet comes out. And you can imagine somebody in the water taking that. And what we understood is like, man, we've got hundreds of acres here. So the plan is get the dock in, and make that area all for fishing, right? That's where the fishing people go. They own they get the galvanized dock, they get the tee off, and they can get some closer to the shelf, right? And then of course there's the boat launch that stays there, and we're working on some ADA things for this place right now. We just had the roof was just redone, the floor just got redone. It's hard to tell, but it did, and we were just able to get the inside of this place remodeled as well. So it's going through permitting. We'll find out at the end of this week, and then we'll be able to pop open the windows and provide concessions and things like that, which we all know increases the length of time you can stay out here to enjoy this place, right? Fun, Captain. And so on the other side, and this is where you were talking about, what was it, mono species or something like that? So
Monoculture.
yes. So we got that little bit of that going on right over here, where some of our old growth has the arborist has had to pull them out, it's rotted out, and then you can clearly see where the blackberries are just decided to take over. So what we're going to do is we're going to just chop all that back, remove that fence, try to get the blackberries out, keep the native species there, and create a beach, if you will, for paddleboarders, kayakers, all the folks that don't have those boat trailers that they're pulling out here, but come over here and try to make something happen. But that'll be a place for them. And so what it does is it turns this nucleus back into a place where the non-motorized folks can hang out, the folks that want to enjoy concessions and rentals, the recreation for swimming and fishing, get our dock back. And I feel if we keep meeting together like this with restoration for the environment and stuff, that's kind of a holistic way to take care of this entire area. So that's the plan, right? Yeah.
Thank you, William, and thank you everybody for being here today. Just a few more closing thoughts. The Clover Creek Restoration Alliance, we are a membership organization, and we are trying to unite the different parts of our watershed as a voice for the watershed, to advocate for restoration. You can become a member of CCRA, and today only, if you do, I will pay for 1 hour on one of Will's kayaks. So, so go talk to Marianne or Deidre back there if you're interested. Check out our website at clovercreekrestoration.org, and I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their day. Thank you.